The forest was quiet. Too quiet. It was my first week as a licensed wildlife tracker in the Alaskan wilderness. I could hear my own breathing, fast, shallow. My boots sank into the damp earth, and every shadow felt alive. Then I saw it. A flash of brown fur, and eyes locked onto mine, like they'd been waiting. The mission was simple. Find a tagged bear that had vanished from our study zone. They warned me, don't get too close. Observe from a distance. But in the wild, rules have a way of breaking themselves. The weather was turning ugly. Cold mist clung to the pines, wind slicing through my jacket. Every step deeper into the forest felt heavier, like the trees themselves were whispering, "Turn back." That's when I found the tracks. Massive paw prints in the mud, each one the size of my hand. The claw marks deep, sharp, fresh. And then the smell hit me. A pungent mix of wet fur and raw earth. I looked up and froze. There he was. A Kodiak bear, easily over 1,000 pounds, standing on a ridge above me. Fur matted, left ear torn, a fighter. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. My instincts screamed, "Run!" But I remembered the ranger's warning. If you run, you're prey. So I stood my ground, pretending I wasn't terrified. Then it happened. A branch snapped behind me, and the bear lunged. I didn't think. I ran. The forest exploded with sound. My boots pounding against the earth, his massive body crashing through trees like they were twigs. I dove into a narrow ravine, mud splashing into my face. My backpack snagged on a branch, ripping it away. I crawled forward, my hands bleeding from sharp rocks. And then, silence. The kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. I held my breath, ears straining. My heartbeat was so loud it drowned the forest. Somewhere above me, snow shifted off a branch, falling soft, muffled. I forced myself to peek over the edge of the ravine. Nothing. The ridge was empty. I swallowed hard, chest tight, legs shaking beneath me. He could be anywhere, circling, waiting. Then the crackle of static. My radio. Daniel's voice broke through, steady but tense. "You alive, rookie?" Relief hit me like a wave. I fumbled for the device, voice shaking. "Yeah, I think so." "Stay put. Don't move till I say." I should have listened, but fear has a way of moving your legs before your mind catches up. I pulled myself out of the ravine, scanning the trees, every shadow alive with threat. That's when I saw him again. Not Daniel, the bear. He was limping now, dragging one leg through the snow, and around that leg, metal glinted. A snare. My breath caught. Daniel appeared from the tree line, rifle raised, eyes locked on the beast. He moved with the calm of a man who'd done this 100 times. "He's hurt," I whispered. Daniel's eyes didn't leave the target. "Makes him more dangerous. Stay back." But I couldn't. Something in the bear's eyes rooted me to the spot. Not rage, not hunger, but pain. Daniel lowered the rifle slightly. His voice was low, deliberate. "We can leave him, or we can try to save him. But if you move closer, you'd better be sure. Because if he charges, I won't hesitate." My hands shook. The air felt too thin, my lungs too small. The bear groaned low in his chest, swaying, the steel biting deep into his flesh. And in that moment, I knew. I moved. Snow crunched beneath my boots as I approached, slow, deliberate, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. The bear's head lifted, eyes flashing. He bared his teeth, a low roar rumbling, but he didn't lunge. I knelt in the snow, my hands trembling as I reached for the trap. The steel was rusted, jagged, biting deep into flesh and fur. Blood stained the snow dark. Daniel hovered behind me, rifle still ready. The bear shifted, muscles tightening. One wrong move, one flinch, and it'd all be over. I worked the snare, my breath shallow, my fingers slipping on blood-slick steel. For what felt like hours, nothing existed but the clink of metal, the thunder of my heartbeat, the low, guttural growls vibrating in the air. Then, it gave. The snare snapped loose. The bear staggered back, dragging his leg free, breath heavy. For a long, endless moment, he looked at me. And in those eyes, I saw something shift. Not hate, not fear, something else. Then, without a sound, he turned and disappeared into the trees.
The storm rolled in fast. By nightfall, the forest was unrecognizable. Snow fell in heavy sheets, swallowing the world in white. The trees groaned under its weight, their branches sagging low like weary arms. Daniel and I set up a makeshift camp, huddled beneath a canvas stretched between pines. The fire sputtered in the wind, shadows dancing across our faces. Neither of us spoke much, but I could tell we were both thinking about the same thing: the bear. I lay awake long after Daniel's steady breathing told me he was asleep. Every creak of the forest, every snap of a branch set my nerves on edge. And then I heard it. Voices, muffled. Not Daniel's, not mine. I sat up, straining to listen. The storm swallowed sound, but I caught pieces carried on the wind. Check the traps. Worth thousands. My blood ran cold. Poachers. I shook Daniel awake, my hand over his mouth before he could speak. I pointed toward the tree line. His eyes sharpened instantly, soldier instinct kicking in. We killed the fire. Darkness swallowed us whole. The voices grew closer, rough, careless, laced with greed. Flashlights cut through the storm. I counted 3 men. Thick coats, rifles slung across their shoulders, steel traps hanging from their packs. One of them laughed, a sound that made my stomach twist. "Bear bile alone can fetch a fortune in the markets," he sneered. "Break 'em, bleed 'em, sell 'em. Easy money." Daniel's jaw tightened. His hand hovered near his rifle, but he didn't move. We stayed hidden, breaths shallow, as the men passed by, leaving fresh footprints in the snow. When their voices finally faded into the storm, Daniel turned to me. His voice was low, almost a growl. "They'll find him." He didn't have to say who. I already knew. The bear. Wounded, limping, vulnerable. I swallowed hard. "We can stop them." Daniel studied me for a long moment, eyes narrowing. Then he shook his head. "You don't stop men like that with hope. You stop them with bullets, and you'd better be ready to pull the trigger." His words cut deep. I wanted to argue, to say there was another way, but the truth was simple. If those men reached him first, the bear didn't stand a chance. The storm raged all night. By dawn, the snow had buried half our camp, but the poachers' tracks were still there, carved deep into the white. We followed. Hours passed. The forest felt endless, an endless labyrinth of white and shadow. Then up ahead, we heard it. the sharp crack of a rifle, and a roar that shook the earth. I froze, heart leaping into my throat. Daniel broke into a run, his boots pounding the snow, his rifle ready. I followed, lungs burning, legs screaming. We burst into a clearing, and there he was. The bear. Snarling, massive, his fur matted with blood. 2 poachers circled him, rifles raised, shouting curses through the storm. A third lay on the ground, unmoving, crimson staining the snow. The bear roared again, swiping with claws that split the air like knives. The men fired. The sound shattered the world, deafening, brutal. The bear staggered, blood spraying against the snow. I cried out before I could stop myself. The nearest poacher turned, eyes locking on me. "Hey!" he shouted, lifting his rifle. But he never got the chance to fire. Daniel's shot rang out, clean, precise. The man crumpled into the snow. The clearing erupted in chaos, gunfire, roars, screams. The bear charged, his massive body crashing into the last poacher, sending him flying like a rag doll. The man hit a tree with a sickening crack, his rifle spinning away. Silence fell. Snow drifted down in slow, lazy flakes. The clearing stank of blood and gunpowder. The bear swayed, breath ragged, crimson staining his fur. But he was alive. Our eyes met again across the clearing, and just like before, I felt it. That unspoken connection. He was no longer just a beast, no longer just a wild animal in the trees. He was something more. Daniel lowered his rifle slowly, his breath heavy. He muttered under himself, almost to himself. God help us, that's no ordinary bear.
The silence didn't last. Daniel motioned toward the downed poachers, his voice sharp. "We can't stay here. Someone will come looking." I nodded, but my eyes never left the bear. He swayed on his feet, blood dripping into the snow. Every breath he took was ragged, pained. I took a step toward him. Daniel hissed, "Are you insane?" But I couldn't stop. Something inside me, call it instinct, call it madness, pulled me forward. My boots crunched softly in the snow. The bear's eyes tracked me, wary, exhausted. I raised my hands slowly, showing I held no weapon. "I'm not here to hurt you," I whispered, though my voice shook. "I know you don't understand me, but you have to trust me." The bear let out a low, guttural growl. Not a threat, a warning, a plea. I saw it then. A bullet lodged in his shoulder, the fur around it soaked dark. If it stayed, infection would kill him long before hunger or winter ever could. I swallowed hard. "Daniel, we have to help him." Daniel stared at me like I'd grown another head. "You're out of your damn mind. That thing almost killed you yesterday, and now you want to patch it up?" "Yes," my voice was steady now, "because if we walk away, we're no better than the men we just fought." For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. Then, with a muttered curse, he slung his rifle and dug into his pack. He tossed me a med kit. "If he takes your arm off, don't say I didn't warn you." My hands trembled as I knelt in the snow. The bear shifted, his breath steaming in the cold air. His massive head lowered, eyes locked on me. I reached out slowly, every instinct screaming at me to run. But I didn't. I pressed the gauze gently against his wound. The bear flinched, growled, but didn't strike. Daniel hovered nearby, rifle still ready, but I barely noticed. I worked quickly, cleaning the wound, pulling the bullet free with shaking hands. Blood coated my fingers, hot against the cold. When it was done, I stepped back slowly, heart pounding so hard it hurt. The bear didn't move. He just stood there, breathing heavy, eyes burning into mine. And then he turned, limped into the tree line, disappeared. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My knees gave way and I sank into the snow, shaking. Daniel crouched beside me,
his face unreadable. "You're either the bravest rookie I ever seen, or the dumbest." Maybe both," I muttered. He didn't laugh. Instead, he stared at the spot where the bear had vanished. His voice was low, almost thoughtful. "You realize what you just did, right? You didn't just save a bear. You forged something, a connection. And that's the kind of thing that changes a man." His words stayed with me. That night, I dreamed of the bear, of eyes like embers watching me from the dark, not with hatred, not with hunger, but with something else. Recognition. When I woke, the forest was quiet again. Too quiet. Daniel was already up, scanning the tree line, his rifle across his knees. He glanced at me. "Sleep well, hero?" I ignored the jab and pulled myself to my feet. But before I could answer, the sound hit us. A howl. Low. Long. Hunting. Wolves. And they weren't far. Daniel stood instantly, eyes sharp. Pack's on the move, and from the sound of it, they're hungry. The howls grew louder, echoing across the frozen trees. Dozens of voices weaving together into a song of death. I tightened my grip on the knife at my belt. We weren't just being hunted by wolves, we were being swallowed by the wilderness itself. And somewhere out there, bleeding, limping, alone, the bear was facing the same fate. I clenched my jaw. I couldn't explain why, but I knew if we didn't find him before the wolves did, the story would end here. And not just his.
The first wolf appeared at dusk, a shadow slipping between the trees, silent as falling snow. Then another, and another. Their eyes glowed in the dim light, dozens of them circling just beyond the reach of our fire. Yellow, hungry, watching. Daniel cursed under his breath. "They've been tracking us all day." The wolves didn't rush. They didn't need to. They knew time was on their side. The storm was thinning, the wind cutting sharp through my jacket. The fire sputtered, small and fragile against the dark. I tightened my grip on the knife at my belt, though I knew it was laughable. One blade against a dozen predators. I wouldn't last a heartbeat. The howls began again. Closer now, echoing through the trees until the sound seemed to come from everywhere at once. Then one broke from the shadows, leaping, snarling, teeth flashing white in the firelight. Daniel's rifle cracked, the wolf collapsing midair, sliding to a stop just feet from me, but its death was the signal the others had been waiting for. The pack surged forward. Chaos exploded. Daniel fired again and again, each shot echoing through the clearing, but for every wolf that fell, two more seemed to take its place. I swung my knife wildly, the blade catching fur, teeth snapping inches from my arm. Hot breath, snarls, blood, the world shrank to pure survival. One wolf slammed into me, knocking me hard onto the snow. Its jaws snapped at my throat, rank breath filling my lungs. I shoved the knife upward, steel scraping bone. The beast yelped, twisting, but another was already there, its teeth sinking into my sleeve, dragging me through the snow. "Grace!" Daniel's voice cut through the chaos. I struggled, kicking, fighting, but the wolf's weight pinned me down. Its jaws gnashed closer to my face, saliva spraying. And then the earth shook. A roar split the night, deeper, louder, more powerful than anything I'd ever heard. The wolves froze. Just for a second. But a second was enough. The bear burst from the tree line like a thunderclap, his massive body plowed through the pack, claws raking, jaws snapping. A wolf went flying, another crushed beneath his weight. The pack scattered, snarling, yelping, their formation broken. The wolf on my arm let go instantly, retreating with a whine.
I scrambled back, chest heaving, as the bear towered above us, a force of nature unleashed. Daniel lowered his rifle, eyes wide with disbelief. Son of a... The bear roared again, the sound rolling through the forest like thunder. Wolves darted in, snapping at his legs, but he swapped them aside like insects. His teeth clamped down on one spine, shaking it limp before tossing it into the dark. The pack faltered. Hunger battled fear in their glowing eyes. For the first time since the howls began, I felt a flicker of hope. The bear wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for us. The wolves circled again, snarling, but their rhythm was broken. Every lunge met with claws, teeth, raw fury. And slowly, they began to retreat. One by one, they slipped back into the trees, their howls fading into the distance until the forest fell silent once more. The clearing was a graveyard of red-stained snow and broken bodies. My chest heaved, every muscle trembling. I turned, and my eyes met his. The bear stood in the center of the carnage, his breath steaming, fur matted with blood. Not just his, the wolves'. For a moment, everything else faded. It was just the two of us again. Hunter and hunted. Enemy and ally. He had saved my life. Slowly, cautiously, I raised my hand. Not in threat, not in fear, but in respect. The bear's massive head tilted, his eyes narrowing. And then, without a sound, he turned and disappeared into the trees once more. Daniel let out a low whistle, shaking his head. I've seen a lot in my years out here, but I've never seen that. I swallowed hard, my hands still raised, my chest still pounding. Neither had I. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The story between us wasn't over. It was only beginning.
The wolves didn't come back, but the forest didn't feel safe. Not anymore. We dragged the bodies of the dead wolves to the edge of the clearing, burying them shallow beneath the snow. Daniel said it would keep scavengers busy, buy us some time, but I could feel eyes on us the entire time. Not the wolves, not the storm, something else. Him. The bear was still out there, watching. That night the fire burned low. Daniel cleaned his rifle in silence, the metal glinting in the flickering light. I couldn't stop replaying the scene in my head. The roar, the chaos, the way he charged into the pack without hesitation. Daniel must have noticed my distraction. "You think he came back to save you," he said flatly, not looking up from his rifle. I hesitated. He did. Daniel shook his head. No, he came back because wolves were after him too. You were just in the crossfire. I wanted to believe him, but deep down I didn't. Because when those teeth were at my throat, when the snow was painted red, he had chosen to fight them, not me. And that wasn't coincidence. The days blurred after that. The storm raged on, burying the forest deeper under white. Food was scarce, every step heavier than the last. But we weren't alone. Sometimes at night, I'd catch movement at the edge of the trees, a shadow too big to be wolf, too silent to be human, glowing eyes reflecting the firelight, and then gone. Daniel dismissed it. Your imagination. But I knew better. The bear was following us. Not hunting, not fleeing, just keeping his distance. One morning, we woke to find tracks circling our camp. massive paw prints pressed deep into the snow. And beside them, smaller prints. Boots. Not ours. Poachers. Daniel cursed, scanning the tree line, his rifle ready. They're back, and they're close. My stomach tightened. If they found the bear again, there wouldn't be a second chance. Not with traps, not with bullets. We followed the tracks cautiously, weaving through the pines until the smell of smoke reached us. Voices carried on the wind, rough, confident. We crept closer, crouching low. Through the branches, we saw them. 4 men this time, armed to the teeth. Around their campfire, steel snares glinted in the firelight, coils of rope, bloody knives, and strung beside them, trophies, pelts. Bears, wolves, even lynx, dead eyes staring blankly into the snow. I felt bile rise in my throat. Daniel's face hardened, his knuckles white around his rifle. "We can't take them head on," he muttered. "Too many, too well armed." "Then what?" I whispered. His jaw tightened. "We wait and we pray the bear stays clear." But the bear wasn't keeping clear, because just beyond the camp, chained to a tree, we saw him. The Kodiak. His massive body slumped, fur matted with fresh wounds. A steel collar bit into his neck, the chain as thick as my wrist. Blood dripped into the snow. One of the poachers laughed and tossed a stone that struck his side. The bear growled weakly, but didn't rise. Rage lit my chest like fire. Every muscle screamed to move, to act, to tear those chains free. But Daniel's hand gripped my arm hard. "Not yet," he hissed. "Move too soon and we're both dead." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay still. But my heart was already moving. Toward him. Toward the beast who had saved my life. And now it was my turn to save his.
We waited for nightfall. The poachers drank around their fire, passing bottles, their laughter echoing through the trees. Their rifles leaned against logs, close enough to grab, but not close enough to keep them sober. Daniel and I lay belly down in the snow, the cold biting into our skin. My eyes never left the bear. He was chained tight, his head low, breath steaming weakly in the cold. Every rise and fall of his chest looked like it could be the last. I whispered, "We can't wait any longer." Daniel's jaw tightened. He scanned the camp, counting. 4 men, maybe more in the woods. You're not trained for this, rookie. "I don't care." My voice was sharp. "They'll kill him. If not tonight, then tomorrow." Daniel studied me for a long moment. Then he exhaled. "Fine, but you follow my lead or we both die. Understood?" I nodded. The plan was simple, silent, precise. Daniel would draw them off, I'd get to the bear. If everything went right, we'd be gone before the camp knew what hit them. But nothing in the wild ever goes right. Daniel crept into position, his shadow blending with the trees. A moment later, a rock whistled through the air, clattering against metal. The poachers jolted, muttering, rifles snatched up. One cursed. "Who's out there?" Another fired blindly into the trees. Daniel's second throw landed farther away, drawing them deeper into the dark. 2 men followed, then a third. That left one. He sat near the fire, grumbling, swigging from his bottle. A rifle rested across his knees. I moved. Silent steps across the snow. Closer, closer. The bear's eyes flicked up at me, glowing in the firelight. Recognition. I crouched low, knife in hand, working at the chain's lock. The steel was thick, rust biting into it, but it wouldn't break. Not with a blade, not with bare hands. The poacher shifted, sniffing the air. Then his head snapped toward me. "Hey!" His rifle came up fast. I froze. And then the bear roared. The sound split the night like thunder, shaking the trees, echoing through the camp. The poacher stumbled, his shot going wide. I lunged, driving my knife into his arm. He screamed, the rifle clattering into the snow. The bear surged forward, the chain snapping taut, fury unleashed. His claws raked the ground inches from the man's face, his growl a wall of sound. The poacher scrambled back, clutching his bleeding arm, screaming for help. The camp erupted. The other three burst from the trees, Daniel on his heels, rifle cracking. Gunfire exploded in the dark, sparks lighting the snow. I fumbled with the lock, my hand slipping, panic surging. "Come on, come on!" Bullets whizzed past. Daniel dropped one poacher clean with a shot to the chest, but the others were closing fast. The bear's fury shook the chain, his teeth snapping, claws tearing at the earth. He could smell blood, taste freedom. Then, crack! A bullet struck the chain, sparks flying. The steel split. The bear was free. The poachers froze, their guns trembling. For a heartbeat, the world was silent. And then the Kodiak charged. He hit the nearest poacher like a freight train, claws tearing through flesh, tossing the man aside like a rag doll. The second fired wildly, bullets slamming into the bear's hide, but rage made him unstoppable. One swipe, and the rifle shattered. One bite, and the screaming stopped. I staggered back, breathless as chaos consumed the camp. The fire cracked, shadows whipping across the carnage. Daniel shouted, "Grace, move!" I stumbled to his side as the last poacher fled into the woods, his screams fading into the night. The clearing stank of blood and smoke. Bodies lay broken in the snow. And in the center of it all stood the bear. Chest heaving, eyes burning, free. For a long, terrible moment, I thought he might turn on us next. His head swung toward me, jaws slick with blood. I froze, knife still in my hand. But then he stopped. His breath slowed. His massive body swayed, weary but steady. And his eyes met mine. Not predator to prey, not hunter to hunted, but something else. Something closer. Daniel raised his rifle, but I lifted a hand. No. The bear huffed, a deep sound in his chest. Then, without another glance, he lumbered into the trees. The night swallowed him whole. Silence returned. Daniel lowered his rifle slowly, shaking his head. "You're going to get us killed, you know that." I didn't answer, because in that moment, I realized something. The day I met the beast was the day I stopped being afraid of him. And the day I started being afraid of what I'd do to protect him.
The snow kept falling. By dawn, the clearing was buried in white again, covering the blood, the bodies, the shattered chains. Almost like nothing had happened. But I couldn't forget. Not the screams, not the roar, not the look in the bear's eyes before he vanished. Daniel and I moved quickly. We tore through the poacher's supplies, gathering what we could: food, ammo, maps. Every scrap of gear meant another day alive. Among the blood-stained packs, I found something that froze me cold. A list. Animals, prices, markets. And at the bottom, written in thick black ink, Kodiak. Alive.
Highest bid. My stomach turned. This wasn't just about survival. It was business. An entire network of men who saw the wild not as life, but as currency. Daniel read over my shoulder, his jaw tightening. They won't stop. Not after losing that much money. They'll send more. I clenched the paper in my fist. They'll come for him again. Daniel's eyes flicked to me. No. They'll come for us. You realize that, don't you? But I couldn't shake the truth. This wasn't about me. It was about him, the bear. He had survived bullets, chains, wolves. But how long could he survive the greed of men? We left the camp behind, following the frozen river deeper into the wilderness. The trees closed around us, heavy with snow. The silence was suffocating. By nightfall, we found a small cave at the base of a ridge. We built a fire inside, its glow bouncing off the stone walls. Daniel sat with his back against the rock, eyes closed, but not asleep. I couldn't rest, not with the thought of him out there, bleeding, alone. The wind howled outside, rattling the branches, and then I heard it. A sound, low and rough, almost drowned by the storm. A growl, a shuffle of heavy steps. I grabbed my knife, my heart pounding. Daniel stirred, rifle in hand. Stay back. But then the shadow filled the mouth of the cave. Massive, familiar. The Kodiak. His fur was ragged, his body swaying. Blood clung to his side, dark against the snow. He had come to us. Daniel cursed under his breath, lifting his rifle, but I stepped forward. No. The bear's eyes locked on mine, exhausted, burning. Slowly, carefully, I crouched, pulling the medkit from my pack. My hands shook, but I held them out where he could see. "I'm not your enemy," I whispered. "Not anymore." The bear huffed, steam rolling from his nostrils. For a moment, I thought he'd lunge, crush me in an instant. But instead, he sank down heavily onto the snow, his head low, breath ragged. He was giving me a chance. I worked fast, cleaning his wounds, packing the worst of them with gauze, wrapping what I could. Every touch felt like a gamble. One wrong move, and I'd be nothing but bones. But he didn't strike. Not once. When it was done, I sat back, breathless. The bear lifted his head, his eyes meeting mine. Something passed between us then. Something deeper than fear, deeper than survival. Daniel muttered from the shadows, "This is madness." But it didn't feel like madness. It felt like the beginning of something neither of us could explain. That night, the bear stayed outside the cave, curled in the snow like a silent guardian. His breath rose in clouds, steady, unyielding. And for the first time since the forest had swallowed me whole, I felt safe. But safety never lasts. Because somewhere out there, beyond the storm, men were regrouping, men with maps, men with money, men who wouldn't stop until the bear was theirs. And I knew what that meant. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. The storm broke at dawn. The sky cleared, pale and bruised, as if the forest itself had been holding its breath all night. The bear was gone. Only deep paw prints in the snow told me he had ever been there at all. Daniel stretched his stiff shoulders, his rifle across his knees. Good. The farther he goes, the better. We can get out of here. But I couldn't let it go. I knew it wasn't over. Men like those poachers didn't take failure lightly. They'd be back, and this time they wouldn't just come for him. We moved through the trees, following the ridge that overlooked the frozen river. The silence felt wrong, too heavy, too waiting. And then the crack split the air. A rifle shot. Snow puffed up near Daniel's boots. Another shot ripped bark from a tree beside my head. We dropped behind the ridge, scrambling for cover. Figures emerged from the tree line across the river. 6 of them, heavily armed. Hunters. They weren't here for us. They were moving in formation, weapons raised, eyes scanning the forest. They were hunting something bigger. And then I heard it. That roar. Deep, rolling, unstoppable. The bear charged from the trees, a mountain of muscle and fury. Gunfire exploded in answer, bullets cracking through the cold air. Time slowed. The Kodiak plowed through the hunters, scattering them like leaves. One man went flying, another crumpled beneath those massive claws. But the others regrouped, firing in bursts, driving him back step by step. I couldn't watch. I couldn't stand by while he bled for a world that only wanted him dead. I broke cover, sprinting down the ridge. Daniel shouted after me, but his voice was lost in the chaos. I grabbed one of the dropped rifles from the snow, my fingers clumsy, my breath ragged, and I fired. One hunter dropped, another spun, blood streaking the snow. The Kodiak surged forward, seizing the opening, his roar shaking the forest itself. The hunters faltered, but their leader, tall, cold-eyed, the one from the list, raised his rifle and aimed straight at the bear's heart. I didn't think. I ran. I slammed into him just as he pulled the trigger. The shot went wide, shattering a tree trunk. We struggled in the snow, fists and steel flashing. He was stronger, trained, but desperation is its own kind of strength. I drove my knife upward, into his shoulder, twisting until he screamed. He fell back, clutching the wound, and the bear finished it. A blur of fur and teeth, a roar that drowned the world. Silence followed, broken only by the wind and the ragged breaths of the living. The hunters were gone. Some fled, some never rose again, and the leader lay broken in the snow. The bear turned to me, his sides heaving, blood soaking his fur. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Man and beast, survivors. I wanted to reach out, to tell him it was over, that he was free, but I didn't have to. His eyes said it all. And then, with the strength of something ancient, he turned and lumbered back into the forest. Each step slower, each step heavier, until the trees swallowed him whole. I never saw him again, but I carry him with me, in the scars on my hands, in the silence that follows every storm, in the truth I can't forget, that in the wild, survival is never just about living. It's about fighting for something bigger than yourself. The bear fought for freedom. I fought for him. And in the end, that made us the same.